Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the new classical music alphabet, the three, pick a letter, and we're up to the letter G. Yeah, we're up to the letter G already. Oh, I'm so excited. And the three Gs, oh, wow. There's some great stuff here in the three Gs. In fact, I have some of it sitting right over here. Yes, there is some of it. Well, it's all over the place. But the first letter G is got to be Christoph Willibald Gluck. Gluck is still one of the most unknown, underrated major composers out there, and he was a major composer. He's famous. I mean, he's on the proscenium arch of all those concert halls. Why, you may ask? Well, because he was the reformer of opera. He dumped the conventions of Baroque opera Syria and started writing music dramas, continuous music with continuous stuff and no frumpy, frilly vocal stuff. I mean, I love frumpy, frilly vocal stuff, quite frankly, and I love opera Syria, actually. But, in terms of the history of music, the way as she's taught, Gluck was a big, 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 big deal. And nowhere bigger than in Orfeo ed Euridice, Orpheus and Euridice. What a beautiful opera that is. And it's short and it only has like 3 characters. So it's terrific. And a chorus. Really an amazing example of what Gluck had in mind by stripping it down to the basics, focusing on the drama and on the expression of direct emotion. And it's such a beautiful work. It really is. And the recording you should hear, I'm just saying, there's lots of period instrument people now with countertenors hooting all over the place and all that nonsense because both characters are high voices. No. Get the recording with Marilyn Horne and Georg Solti on Decca with Covent Garden Forces. The piece should be played like a modern opera. It should be played with modern instruments. It should be big and exciting and yummy and sung to a fare thee well, and this performance is. So there you go. And start getting into Gluck. I mean, Alceste is amazing. He's a phenomenal composer. I mean, he went straight for the jugular expressively. And people, he has a reputation for being sort of cold and classical. It wasn't that way at all. He was like a heavily perspiring, well, he was perspiring because he was a diabetic, but, and he was always having blood sugar issues. But he, it was a hot and heavy emotional guy in his music, and it really is fabulous. We're going to be talking more about Gluck. We have to do that at some point. Anyway, next, after Gluck, Edvard Grieg. Of course, we've got to do a Grieg. Norway's always been apologetic about Grieg because they think that their national composer should write big symphonies and operas and, Wagnerianly grandiose things, especially because they're Nordic, and Wagner was, the king of Nordic mythology and music and all that junk. Well, yeah, so what? Grieg was who he was, and he was wonderful at what he did. And what he did was possibly, along with Mendelssohn's A Midsummer Night's Dream, the greatest incidental music score ever in the history of humanity. That, of course, is Peer Gynt. And you must own a complete Peer Gynt, or else there's no reason to exist. Peer Gynt is fantastic. I was so hooked on Peer Gynt when I was a kid. I really was. I first heard it when I was in 4th grade with that psycho teacher we had. The one who, the nun who decided being a nun wasn't strict enough, so she wanted to impose her ideas of discipline on small, innocent children. And during 4th grade, I didn't have a name. I was number 10. We all had numbers. We were alphabetized and numbered. And so I was number 10, and her name was Miss DeRosa. And that she was ever allowed to have any sort of interaction with children is just one of those, horror things of the 60s. But anyway, we had to study Norway. So she decided we were going to listen to Peer Gynt. And it was the only thing about that class that made it tolerable was listening to Peer Gynt. And then when I got to high school, we did it again in music appreciation and the Hall of the Mountain King. I just loved it. And I was so depressed to find out that Grieg hated it. He called it, he called it cow dung. But what the hell? It's absolutely fantastic music. And Blomstedt, Herbert Blomstedt, and the soloists and chorus of the San Francisco Symphony on Decca conduct it as well as it possibly can be done. And you can listen to it and enjoy it, and not think about, the horrors of, a suburban grammar school education in the 1960s. So there you go. Just enjoy the music. And last but not least, Gershwin! Of course, Gershwin! The Concerto in F. One of the great 20th century piano concertos with Earl Wild, Art, and Arthur Fiedler on RCA, a performance that will never be surpassed. Just astoundingly. In fact, the whole album they did of Gershwin stuff, it's got American in Paris and all the piano and orchestra stuff. It's an incredible record. And the music is sui generis. There's nobody who sounds anything like Gershwin. That's what makes him a great composer, even though his classical output wasn't all that huge. But it's all distinctive and brilliant. And my God, the Concerto in F is fun. It really, really is. And it's easy. The G's were easy. They were for me anyway. I'm very interested to know what you have for the letter G. I have some other thoughts along those lines that could be wonderful. And I do want to suggest one thing. I knew this was going to happen when we started doing this. One of the things I mentioned from the outset is these have to be major composers. Not, I have a G in my collection, Glopinski or Gershwinitude or whatever you want to call them. I don't care. But, it's not about how obscure you are and how much arcane information you know. It's a legitimate attempt to find who are the three great composers whose last name begin with the letter G or letter whatever it is. So pick plausible candidates, please. Not just somebody who has one YouTube video who you may have met when you were in kindergarten. I mean, come on. Play the game, because I've been deleting all the other junk, and I don't mind doing it, but, why waste the time? There are a lot of wonderful composers who need a little boost, and you can help them. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.